So, hi there, everyone. Our next speaker is Burdett, and he's the dark side of the brain guy. And he's a speaker, an author, a business mentor, and really, really passionate in the area of resilience. So, thank you very much, Lance, for being able to talk with us today.
It's my real pleasure. Absolutely. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you. So I've got a few questions for you today, Lance. And the first one that I've got for you is, what do you see are the current challenges in the education system?
In one word, I think inflexibility might be one. It was once described to me as in the education system as a big beast to steer and to move. And I guess it is when it's such a critical organisation, and then I follow Nathan Wallace a lot, and I've had actually Nathan Wallace is neuroscientific educationalist in that, so I do neuroscience as well for adults. And he talks about the first 1,000 days, and thereafter I talk about, probably our school years and further on from there. And it really does set us up for the rest of our life. All of us have got a memory, and most of that memory is made in our early years, and it forms who we are, our personality traits rather than personality types. So those are gone these days, it's traits. So all of our traits come from our early years and from our friends and those around us. So it's really important that we get it right. And at the moment, things aren't quite right from, I guess, building resilience in young.
Fantastic. So what do you wish, looking back now, what do you wish you'd learned at school?
Oh, I wish somebody had shown me how to learn. So I would have been described as having ADHD, I'd suggest. So right out throughout my mum, bless her, kept all of my early report cards, and every single year was needs to concentrate, can't sit still, fidgety, and on it goes, disruptive in class. I was the class clown because I didn't think I could learn. And I was told not until I first left school, high school, no qualifications, had nothing. When I left high school and started studying, I guess, somebody said, you've got quite a high IQ, which is just an ability to learn. And it wasn't until the age of 35 that I joined the New Zealand Police. And somebody took me aside and said, here's some different ways of learning. Try these. That, 2.5 diplomas and a master's later, I'm still going. The other half is I'm doing another diploma at the age of, what am I now, 62.
And that's that thing, isn't it, that you've had that lifelong learning passion, if you like, ignited, because now all of a sudden it's relevant and you can see a point in doing it, and it's ignited your curiosity, and you just go, wow.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And I simply cannot get enough. I read prolifically now, whereas I never before, and if you told me at primary school, at high school, you should really start to concentrate and you need to do this. I tried, but no one showed me. No one took the time. They may have, I just didn't listen. But it was the expectation when I grew up was that here's a curriculum. It's the same for everybody, and off you go. But my dad was Air Force, and so every 2 to 3 years we moved. So we moved right across the North Island into different school zones, from growing up in Bulls, Tarapa, in the Waikato, back to Auckland 3 times. And so moving across those different zones, different regions within the education system was really disruptive. I learnt within the first few weeks of being at school how to write with just like a printing, and then we go to into the Rangitikei district, where down there they were doing that cursor writing with and I had to learn that, and then I had to unlearn it again, and so I guess that was quite disruptive. But had we had a bit of learning around how to learn, and also how that we're all the same. I thought I was different and therefore isolated myself from a lot of people as I grew up. And we're more similar than dissimilar when we're young. And I guess that's the key. If I'd learned a lot earlier in my life, I guess I'd fear what might happen, because I'm just taking off. But it's not too late. But, I've only got 10, 15, 20 years left of my working life, and I wished I'd put my head down a bit sooner.
It's interesting that you say about that we're more similar than dissimilar. In what sort of ways?
Well, fundamentally, the wiring of our brain is the same, the hard wiring. And so the way I describe it in my presentations is I'll ask somebody in the audience, what was the name of the first school you went to? And they'll tell everybody, and I'll say, who was thinking of the name of their first school? Just like everybody watching this or yourself, you're thinking of the name of your first school. So we have the fundamentals of our brain figured out already. And that's what, if you understand that, right? And there are differences though. There are a lot of differences. If a dog could say one word, who'd be thinking of the word woof? Well, a few people would, but I've never heard a dog say woof. But that's what I think, right? So it's what I learned as a child. So my parents said, and the dog says woof. And so these things that we learn are probably, they sit with us for the rest of our life. But fundamentally, we are the same. Fundamentally, we are a creature who look after others before ourselves. Fundamentally, we are people who want to be part of a community. So there's a whole lot of similarities. Even as an adult now, I'll sit there and think of a few things, and I wonder if I should ask that question, and somebody else will ask, and I go, I knew I should have asked it. Fundamentally, we are the same, and we still get tired at 3 PM and wake up at 3 AM. That's because that's what we used to do. And so the fundamentals of our brain are pretty similar. The major differences of what we've learned in our life, and the very first thing you learn is the most important, because that sets you up for the rest of your life, and it's very hard to change that.
Because that's what wires our brains, isn't it? Right from the minute that we're born, every single experience, creates those connections and so on. And those connections are made in the context of the culture that our culture, our family, and that's where some of those differences do start to come in as we grow up with different value systems and with different languages and all of that sort of stuff.
That's exactly right. And, so some of it is, I guess, genetics. But not as much as we once thought. So a big advance was in the 1990s when MRI scanning came along. We started to be able to, researchers started to be able to look at the brain and see how it lights up and where it lights up. And now we've got, since then, crikey, we've got, functional MRI, we've got PEC scanning, SPEC scanning. And so we're learning more and more. So neuroscience has come into education and psychology and has said, well, yes, you sort of got it right, but here's the accurate side of things. And that's just hugely advanced the way we learn. Early times, so in early times, everything was done by writing. And again, it's hardwired into our brain. And so at the moment, the world is going through a bit of a shift, right? So technology advanced so much in just the last 10 years, where we've got busy brain syndrome, sometimes people call it. But, if you give a child a pen or a pencil, no matter what age, it won't know how to hold it, but the child will know what to do with it. And usually it's draw on the walls. And as I crudely say, well, where did we, early times, where did they draw? Cave drawings on the walls. But we know what to do with it. But the wiring of the brain is changing, and the soft wiring. Genetics, not so important, because we now have epigenetics, so we know that we can mask genetic dispositions to certain things, provided we behave in a certain way. So, this is exciting times to be around, particularly in the learning arena, and particularly more so to be young.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think with all of that knowledge that we have around how our brains work, it's much easier for us to be able to go, okay, now what do we do with this? How can we change and help people that haven't necessarily had the best start?
Yeah, look, I think that's the case. And so, the fundamentals, if you understand the fundamentals of the brain, so every piece of information that comes into our head, it goes straight to the limbic system. The limbic system, the two parts that are major in learning are it's basically the amygdala, which is, is there danger associated here? It regulates all of our emotions. And there's the hippocampus, our long-term memory. And so I have what we call this timeline. We have these little markers, things we learned in our life. And understanding that and getting that right in the early stages of our life is extremely important, because that's who we are. That's what makes us who we are. Yes, probably the biggest influence is our environment, those around us, but still the fundamentals of what we learn is very hard to shift from. And that's sort of what people say, oh, they've got a fixed mindset. No, they haven't. It's just what they first learned. And so the way to change that is to show them. So, a lot of things, the work that I do around, I call it mind health rather than mental health. There's two ways to get things. You've got to get something out of your head if you're struggling with it. One is to talk, one is to write. And the reason we do that, the third thing though, that we also could do is understand what's going on. And now when you understand how the brain itself works, you've got a far greater chance of changing things and changing your life, understanding that fundamentals. It's hard, it's 60 to 80 days to change your pattern of behavior, not 21 days as we once thought. But you can change. And this is what, when I talk in high schools, now is the time in high schools, sort of between the 13 to 18 years where we really want to get inside people's heads and show them how good they actually are, because none of us think that we're as any good as anybody else. We spend our whole life comparing. That's why you ask one person, what's the name of the first school they went to? Everyone's thinking of that because we're comparing ourselves the whole time. And so understanding that everybody's got a voice inside their head, or they talk to themselves. It's called an internal narrative. It's not just you. You're not alone in that. So understanding how it works gives you the greater chance to change things, and the only thing that we're comparing with when we do that is ourselves. And so we have this timeline with these little markers. And when something happens in our life in particular, that's towards the negative side rather than the positive side, we look for a benchmark. We look for something to compare with. And the only thing to compare with is ourselves. And so therefore we're readily recalling all the other negative events. And, we might tell ourselves we've made a couple of 3 mistakes. Why do I always do this? Well, you don't. You don't. It's just that there's some other markers and you've gone to those markers to say, here's your reference material. Is this helpful? And most times it's not. In fact, it never is. And so you think, I'm always like this. No, you're not. No, it's just the way the brain operates to keep you safe. So we are creatures who look to the future based on our past. Yeah. That's how it works.
And so much of what you're talking about feeds into this word called resilience, which is a massive buzzword at the moment. We're hearing it all over the place. So what is resilience?
Yeah, well, so originally resilience talked about if you fell over, here's how to get back up, right? So I prefer to use the term resilience these days. And how can I stay standing upright? Well, not standing. We're going to get smacked around on occasion, and it's learning how to grow from that, or maybe not grow from that, because we know that some people, adversity builds strength. For many of us, adversity does the opposite. We become a little fragile, and we remember that because we keep remembering that thing. And, we have that inner critic that really does tie us up on occasion. But so understanding, I guess, the fact that, so resilience for me is understanding how the brain works and knowing that you can change things. It takes a little bit of time, but, I'm going through one of those learning moments at the moment. I had a bit of a setback 2 or 3 days ago, and it's just been replaying in my head the whole time. I know what's going on. But we have to go through it, and I know that. I don't want to. I could push it aside, but if I don't deal with it, if I don't process it in the right way and come to the right conclusion for myself, it will keep popping back. So I'm about to launch out of it now and move on, right? And this session is the start of that. So resilience for me is about not being perfect, not being strong, not putting on a brave face, not pushing things away. It's about letting it happen and then going, right, did I learn? What did I learn? What might I do differently? What were the good things? It's hard to find those good things, but there generally always is. And I hear people a lot say, but when you lose somebody dear to you, that's such a loss. Yes, but they wouldn't have been a loss had they not been in your life. And so it's just finding those little gems that you go, that's why I can't get over this, because I love them so much. Boom, we come out.
That's right, isn't it? And this is some of the stuff that is true for all people, because all people feel, don't we? And I know so many people that because it hurts, you want to be able to sort of magic it away or suppress it. But I don't know about you, I haven't been able to find a magic wand that is able to just magic it away and make everything perfect again. And so what you're describing is the tools to be able to go through and just to be able to sit with it and go, yep.
Yeah, look, I think that's the big thing is we're all the same. We all go through adverse times on occasions, and so it really is important that we understand that we're going to get knocked down, maybe get pushed around a little bit, and that's okay. Work with it rather than against it. Don't. And this happened to me, right? So I've written a book about it. I had depression. And was in a terrible place as a crisis negotiator for New Zealand Police. So I'm talking with people who are in suicidal situations and in a bad space myself. And I would be pushing it away. And now I don't. Now I go, oh, here we go. We've got a couple of days of bad sleeps. I'm going to have a horrible sickly feeling in my stomach for a few days. I'm going to have to come up with ideas, and then it's a bit sort of like the grief cycle. I'll get a bit angry, and then I'll go, I know what I'll do. I'll send them a stern email and go, no, don't do that. I'll send them a nice email. Okay, do that. Right. And so that's what it's about. It's finding the right thing that you can do and learning from yourself. And now I know, it's about the right time for me to step out and move on from what happened last week. And I will. It just takes a bit of time. And will I learn from it? You bet.
Yeah, absolutely. I had somebody say something to me a couple of years ago, because we all wake up and, sometimes we have a bad day, and sometimes, something really happens and we do get severely knocked. And that one of the things that person said to me was, how long do you need to have a bad day?
Oh, I get asked that all the time. How long is it going to take? Well,
so like we can wake up and go, well, today's a bad day, right? And have a whole day that's a bad day. But sometimes we may not need that whole bad day. We may only need an hour or two, or just the morning, or whatever. And so it's again that awareness of, okay, how long am I going to give myself to be able to get through this?
Yeah, and that's the big thing. So I've just had this very discussion I was interviewed for a podcast yesterday around this, and the person I was talking to thought that I had it all together, right? And I've just been telling him about the journey that I'd been on in the last few days. He says, but you have got it all. No, I haven't. No one's got it all together. I know people who in my industry who I look at and go, I wish I was like them. And I'll get talking to them. They go, oh, I've just got this issue going on in my private personal life at the moment. And I'd like to chat about it. And I'm thinking, why talk to me? And it's just, and it never ceases to amaze how we are all the same, how we all struggle with, and this is the thing, our struggles are different for each of us. What might be massive for you is not massive for me, and vice versa. What really might beat me up, you just go, oh, look, you just need to let that go. No, you need to let that process work its way through and come out when you're ready. Now, we used to put times, it was once said that 18 months to get over a death, and that we had these sort of things to go on. But no, it's when you are right, when you've got down, and you almost sort of have to sort of work your way down to, right, I've had enough, and then push through and on you go. And all that's doing, it's a bit like coming out of COVID. We're still sort of in it, but you know what I mean? That initial smack that we had, you've got to work through the process. And now that we're starting to work through it and we're starting to have some rules and regulations and things, we're becoming a little bit more comfortable. Why? Well, mainly because our memory has stored that information of the initial shock. And so every time we hear, there's another 5 cases today, all in managed isolation, you go, and so we're doing this little roller coaster, but our brain is processing. You've got to take that through the process, so it can have time to shuffle around and find all the files and put all the bits together and go, right, I've got the picture, move on.
Absolutely. Okay, so next question then is around young people. How do they develop resilience? How can they? What are the tips?
Yeah, look, it really is having an understanding again, and it does start at an early age, right? As soon as you can. It starts at, so we have apparently the best early childhood education in the world. system, because it's student-led, they call it, and then we seem to have people, we stick to this curriculum. And the thing that I talk about, and I guess it's for me, because I'm a bit different, right? And I am. Those that know me always say I'm a bit different. So I'd be asked I want you, the teacher might say, draw a house. And so I'll draw a dog. And the teacher will say, that's wrong. And I'll say, but every house should have a dog. Oh, and so some of us learn differently. And going back to that original question of yours, it's about having flexibility for that person and flexible learning environments, and asking the child, no one size, the education size fits all. Because of the many differences, the more we understand, putting people into boxes and saying, here's the learning strategy for you, no longer works for many people. So we're finding people are falling through the system these days. So how do we teach kids to be more resilient? Well, for me, the first thing is nothing has to be perfect. Right? And so I'm a perfectionist, man. It's just, it's killed me literally all my life. It just beats me up, everything. And that's why I'm having this trouble at the moment, because things weren't right. I'm a perfectionist. And where did that come from? That would be from my early childhood. So teaching the children how to handle disappointment would be a start. I wish somebody had told me that the voice inside my head is controllable, that it's you, it's a thought, that's all it is, and you can change that thought. That would be something powerful for me. And understanding myself more, and just everything we've just talked about now around processing bad things, that use it to your advantage, not your disadvantage. It doesn't just happen to you, it happens to others. What did you learn? What might you do differently next time? So those are three things I think that for me would be the biggest importance in young children. Is one, how do you handle disappointment? It does not have to be right. Two, how do we learn about ourselves and our emotions? And three, how do we get through things when things do happen?
And that's true for actually people of any age, isn't it? And
yeah, it is. But I think the earlier we learn it, the better off we'll be.
Yeah, fantastic. And so as a teacher, as an educator in the system, I mean, I'm working with teachers all of the time, and because we are working with teachers doing the Incredible Years program in early childhood, and so helping teachers being able to work with the students. And some of the strategies that we're teaching the teachers is around that emotional understanding, that emotional competence, knowing the names of the emotions, knowing what they feel like in oneself, knowing what they look like in others, and knowing what to do with them. And so much of that around being able to calm ourselves down, and when everything's going to chaos, actually just stop, recognize, take a deep breath.
Yeah. So I've come across a one of the breathing techniques. So I won't do it here because it's a little bit unkind if the audience is in front of you. But I take people on a journey to show them. I'll make a suggestion and they'll drop their mood. Then I'll make another suggestion and lift them back up. And then I'll say, if that doesn't work, how about this? And all you got to do is just take a big deep breath through your nose. That's where your olfactory system, and fill your chest and your stomach up. And then you sigh as hard as you can. And then I'll say, think of something. It's impossible to think immediately of anything after a deep breath because of the alveoli in our lungs. They are little nodes that grab hold of the oxygen, right? And they collapse because we're spending a lot more time in fight or flight because our brain's going faster. There's a bit of a story behind it, but that's the summary of it. And so we're chest breathing a lot. Breathing's the first thing to disappear when any sort of uncertainty or adversity. So our brain sees uncertainty as adversity. It's a danger because I don't know. That's what happened with COVID. I don't know what's coming. So let's prepare. Let's go to the shops and fill up our basket with food. Let's go and line up in a queue and get the car filled up. I don't care if you're not going anywhere. Let's do that anyway. The old Maslow model. I love Maslow. Physiology. Let's get all those basic physiological needs sorted first, just in case, which is what a lot of people did. Sorry.
Especially the toilet paper.
I know. I went around it. You weren't going to get me, but I filled up 2 double packs of paper towels because subconsciously, right? We've got to have a clean home, and so that's what we do. And so just taking a big deep, and I've done it with audience. I say, come on, think of something. No, just start laughing. It just wipes everything out. It's not the sigh, well, it is the sigh, it's the breath afterwards, but breathing is such simple things. And we've been doing it since time began. We've just forgotten how to, well, we haven't forgotten how to breathe. We need to change the way we breathe to keep up with the busy times. We need to slow our breathing down. At the moment, our breathing is keeping up with the times, right? The busy times. So we're breathing faster. We need to slow our breathing down, to slow our thoughts down, to bring us back to then adapt to adversity, then adapt to this ever-changing world.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And there's an exercise that I do with groups of people that I work with, both in New Zealand and also in Bangladesh, Nepal, where I've also had the opportunity to work. And one of the things that I do is to get people to count their breaths for a minute. And in New Zealand, generally, the number is around between 12 and 20, 24, that sort of range for that first minute. And then I get them to slow it right down and to see where they can get to. And we're down to the, the 4, 5, 6, 8, that sort of number. Every single person is able to reduce. And then we ask them around, well, how do you feel? Relaxed, calm, stronger, grounded, confident. Those sorts of things come out of just slowing our breathing down for 1 minute.
Yeah, so I do one for 2 minutes. So it's 6 seconds in, 6 seconds out. And most people start off by going, they're waiting for me to say out. Out. And so we just do that for 2 minutes, puts you into the alpha zone. And we come out of that and say, well, so how do you feel? It's like, and you see them look around the room, looking at the colors.
Yeah, because
I always say, welcome to the 70s.
Yeah,
because that's what the 70s was like, right? We had colors everywhere.
Yeah, and it's a totally different feel.
Yeah.
One of the reasons why I wanted to share this particular story with you was that in Bangladesh, the numbers are totally different because of the stress levels in the life, right? Here, you've got those sort of numbers of 12 to 20, 24. Over there, you're starting at 20. And I've had one person who is breathing 59 times a minute.
Wow.
And so you've got this sort of level of stress, 30, 35, 40 breaths a minute. It's not unusual. And so
so physiology affects psychology, psychology affects physiology. You can use both to interplay to control the other. And the thing around breathing and counting is what we're both doing, is you're controlling both. You're controlling the physiology with the breathing and the psychology with the counting or the thinking or the whatever it might be. And my meditation's been doing that for thousands of years, but I'd speak with lots of people who do meditation, and I'd say to them, but I bet at the moment the flow is just coming in, so we'll have the thought, let it go, have the thought. The thoughts are just coming and coming. It's harder. So we do have to slow down even more than we ever did. Yes. And that's why it's gone from 5 seconds to 6 seconds these days, because we just got to slow down a bit more to slow everything else down. And then see that it's all linked with the amygdala. So those amygdala that are responsible for controlling our emotions. If we get into this heightened state, this hyperactive state, they're hyperactive and they change our breathing. And so we can influence them. And in fact, the science that's coming out is the more you do those breathing techniques to slow them down, the amygdala not only become, they deactivate, if you like, they don't fully deactivate, but they actually reduce in size back to their normal size, because at the moment they're inflamed. I call it inflamed. They're going off. And the more you do this, and it does take 60 to 80 days or 90 times before you can rebuild that neural pathway, that'll just go, right, breathe. And once you've got past that 90 times or the 60 to 80 days, you're away, and it just becomes automatic function.
And that's been one of the things going and working in Bangladesh, and you go back and you see people again and asking them what's the most important thing, or what have you found has been the most useful? And it has been the ability to breathe, that ability to be able to change our breath. And so it's a key part of developing that resilience, isn't it?
Yeah, look, it is. And so when I run my workshops, I just say, the only thing I want you to remember from this entire 4-hour session is breathe. And just, that's it. And then you might want to, the second thing might be talk. Start talking more about what's inside your head with others to show you how similar we all are. And it's only 2 ways to get things out of your head, I guess. One is to talk, one is to write. So start talking, which is what we've always done. And the third thing, I guess, is really around exercise. And exercise is a 15-minute walk at the end of every day, just after dinner time, just to burn off the adrenaline, burn off the cortisol, to slow our breathing, get some endorphins in there to get rid of all the rubbish out of our head, and then generally we'll sleep better.
So that links with sleep, with
so those three things, yeah, right. So that we're controlling our breathing, which controls our psychology anyway. We're starting to talk more openly and get things out of our head, so it's not just ourselves talking to ourselves about ourselves. So we're talking with others, and then that exercise is really critical. It's critical, and if you get those sort of three things right, I'll tell you what'll happen is you'll sleep better. And then when we go through the defrag process overnight, those 3 to 5 REM cycles, which last 90 minutes. And so when I tell people it's, more than one, it's 90 minutes. And that's why we often wake up every 90 minutes. So that's just a REM cycle. You just go into light sleep again. And if something happens, you'll wake up. And so don't worry about that. You're having not a good night's sleep, but you're having a broken night's sleep, but you're still going through a REM if you've had an hour and a half each time.
And to make sure that we get the 3 to 5, because it's those first 3, isn't it?
It's the first 3, that's the critical.
And then we're...
Or the last 3.
Oh, yeah.
Any 3.
All 5 of them.
Any 3.
Because then you've got your creativity.
Yeah, that's it. Any 3 will do. Just give me 3.
And 5 would be even better.
Yeah, that's it.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Lance, for sharing your knowledge today around the topic of resilience. And if you had final tip to somebody, what would it be? Reach out.
You just cannot do this stuff by yourself. Look, I've met, I don't know, thousands of people and spoken with them in the work that I do, and right down into, suicide intervention was my specialty in the police, and I still teach how to go and speak with somebody who might be struggling. How do you identify and how do you speak with them? And that every single one of those people have tried to deal with it themselves. And you just can't, you've got to get it out of your head. We're reluctant to do so. And that comes from fear of what they might say, fear of failure, fear of being judged, fear of, so fear is what keeps us safe. That's why we worry. But it's really, you've got to so reach out to others. And if you don't know who to reach out to, I'm here. And it can be an email, a message, whatever. Do reach out. And there's people, good people like yourself, like myself, like others, wanting to help. Not just sitting here waiting, wanting to do something to help. So reach out.
Yeah, absolutely. And if somebody reaches out to somebody else, how should they respond? Because there's you and there's me, but there's a whole lot of other people here.
Yeah.
So how do we respond in those particular cases, Lance? What's the best way when somebody
the best guide is 2 ears, 1 mouth. So we want to give the other person the opportunity to talk twice as much as we do. That's what we do. Don't judge, don't fix. The worst thing we do is, have you tried this? They don't need that. If you can't think of something to say, don't say anything. Just sit there. Just be with them and listen to their story. And then next time you meet, how about we meet again? Then you might want to offer some suggestions. But we go straight to the, have you tried? People they have, right? So just sit and listen. That's the best thing we can do for those around us. Don't judge. Just tell them that you're there whenever you need them. And when they're ready, you're willing to go on the journey with them.
It's very, 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 very good advice. That's one of the hardest things to learn, isn't it? Because as we're listening to people, we're always wanting to put in what else.
Yeah, we're wired to help others, you see. That's what we're wired to do. And don't. The other thing we can do is look after ourselves, right? Be a little selfish to be a lot selfless. So you'll find that people that are out there helping people who are struggling, usually struggling themselves, and they're doing it to hide their own problems that they're going through in their own situation. So get yourself right, then you can help more people.
That's absolutely right. So it goes back to sleep, breathing.
Yeah, sleep.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's it.
Okay.
Thanks so much for the opportunity. I really appreciate it.
Yeah. Thank you very, very much, Lance. And thank you for your offer as well, for people to be able to reach out to you.
Yeah, that's my pleasure. Thanks so much, Cathy. Really appreciate it.